You really see that tension we were talking about. I mean, should we take up arms or should we just keep suffering and love our way through this? We have a number of questions that have come in from many of you watching. You're watching us on Formed, on their internet outlet platform. So I'm going to get to some of those questions, and then we're going to take a few questions from here as well. This one came in for you, Jim. This woman, or man rather, Mark Smith. I was saved during the Passion of the Christ in 2004. I've been in ministry ever since, and the movie changed my life. Do you expect this film to have the same effect as The Passion? A lot of questions about The Passion. I'll give you that one and one more. Do you think this film will have the same effect as The Passion?
Answer wisely.
Yeah. I think it will have a great effect, tremendous effect on people. It has a great power in it because we didn't, the performances are powerful, but the words are still stronger. And we didn't change any of that. The Passion of the Christ was a unique experience that has never been before. I was 33 years old with the initials of JC, and it was just, it was Jesus. That was a miracle in itself because I kept saying, why would you choose me? And if my friend from Medjugorje said, God doesn't always choose the best, Jim, but he chose you, so what are you going to do about it? But it's true, and in this one, there's a great message in there about forgiveness that in this was very powerful in this time right now because people are talking in my industry, Civil War. This is crazy. You have no idea, what you're talking about. 600 and something thousand people died in the Civil War in our country, in the last one. Can you imagine what you're talking about? This is not what our Lord wants. Forgiveness is everything. It's forgiveness at all costs. And that does not mean weakness. It does not mean passivity. It means meeting evil face to face with love. And that's the power behind this one.
I have questions for you two guys too, but I have a follow-up here, and I've got tons of these. I was going to ask you this earlier. Jim mentioned, and I was there for some of this, the shoulder separation during the Passion of the Christ, hypothermia, the body, when they would take the latex bodysuit that he wore on the cross, when you'd peel that off, the first layer of his skin came off on some mornings. Given all of that, and the hits with the whip, all of that, the physical suffering, this questionnaire is asking, was it worth it to go through that physical suffering, and would you be willing to do it again?
I did it one time. That's all I need to do it. No.
But there's talk of the resurrection, the sequel now.
Yes.
And would you do it again?
Well, that's the resurrection. But I can tell you this much, when they roll the stone away, there won't be little Easter bunnies and eggs around. This is the real deal, and what he's going to do with it is going to blow your mind. It's absolutely going to make you so proud. You heard it here, it will be the biggest film in history.
Eric, one of the theater and arts majors here are asking, how did you get into filmmaking and what advice would you have for them?
I got into filmmaking, when you kind of give your life to the Lord and you say, you can do what you want with my life, kind of strap on because you just don't know where he's going to lead you. But long story short, real passionate about evangelizing the young church. And early on, we made a lot of short films to help, do that. And that kind of led to, one thing led to another, and to where we're producing feature films now. But it really came out of like a desire to create it and use a medium that is more relevant today, and to preach the gospel through this medium, to create things that are artfully and spiritually made in a way that's relevant, in a way that the young church can really connect with. And so just my heart as a youth minister and wanting to lead young people to the Lord, you know, is where it came. My advice would be, work hard at whatever it is God is calling you to do. I mean, if you feel like you're led to be a filmmaker, then work at it and study it and practice and rooted in what God is calling you to do, rooted in mission, rooted in some way that God wants to use you with your gifts and your skills, whoever you are, wherever you're at, to better his kingdom and further his kingdom along. And you just never know where you're going to lead. 10 years ago, I never would have even dreamed I had the opportunity and the privilege and the blessing of making a feature film. We were making short films and grabbing actors who were friends and neighbors, and you know, now we get guys like Jim, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing. You know, but you just never know where God's going to lead you, and just stay on that path and pray and listen and follow.
Listen, if it wasn't for this guy, I wouldn't be on the film. So thank you for your faith in me.
Scott, we had a question, and they were asking, how true is the depiction in the film to the scriptures? You've seen the movie.
I have seen the movie. What I would comment on is the relationship between Paul and Luke. I would underscore how similar it is to the relationship we can see between Paul and Timothy, Paul and Titus, both of whom he speaks of as his spiritual sons. That's what you get, that spiritual bond between Paul and Luke. So when they look at each other, you get that sense of spiritual paternity. You know, but the fact that Paul wrote so much of the New Testament, he is the most studied writer in history. But we don't recognize to what extent all of us are spiritual children of St. Paul. And I think that's one of the things that you really pick up on, not just a love for Paul, but a love for Paul's spiritual fatherhood that has affected all of us. You know, he says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. The only thing that he really did that Christ didn't do was write. Jesus never wrote anything down. He said, do this in memory of me. He didn't say, write this. And so most of the 12 never ended up contributing a single book to the collection of 27 that we now call the New Testament, but not because they were lazy or disobedient. They all did this Eucharist in memory of him. But Paul is the one who really took his rabbinic training and applied it with the Holy Spirit to illuminate the mystery of Christ fulfilling all of the promises and all of the prophecies. And I would say this movie really captures that relationship, which I want to strive after.
Yeah. No, and I've never seen it before depicted on screen.
Yeah.
I mean, you rarely see St. Luke at all. I can't think of a movie that had Luke as its centerpiece or even as a supporting role. So it was really, and for me, I have to say, and you mentioned it, Scott, the importance of having that written word handed down through oral tradition, but then eventually something written in the letters. When he kept saying, and he says it throughout the movie, write this down, write this down. I kept thinking of my mother, Angelica, who for so many years, even as her body was declining, she would tell me, full story, tell the full story. And the burden of that struck me so profoundly. The burden that Luke had to carry, because how do you get this thing told? Am I worthy to tell it? Why are you giving this to me? Can't you find somebody else to do this? Your thoughts, Jim, on that mentor relationship and the passing of the torch that inevitably happens in life and in ministries?
Well, I was living it. So many close people to me died, and I was very troubled. But I was also troubled by many of the pictures that were coming back from soldiers, from Navy SEALs. They were giving me pictures of martyrs and our faith, and our media refuses to show the truth. And that this film became more important when we refused to see the truth in the killing of children and babies in our country, or the 2 million children that are sold into prostitution around the world right now. There are going to be a people that are going to have to answer. Courage, which this movie is ardent love. Love creates change by igniting a passion in each one of us, one person at a time. Paul is the spark that ignites a real revolution, and that revolution is love.
And this movie is dedicated to the persecuted church, those who are persecuted for their faith. Was that an idea from the beginning, Eric, or something you all...
No, it was actually an idea that came in prayer, like later on as we were, multiple drafts into the film, and our lead producer, TJ Burton, and I, we were walking and just kind of really, again, reflecting on what was going on around the world. And also, and reflecting back to the time when we did most of the writing of this film was really when things with ISIS and the terrorism was really heating up and starting to get pretty intense and more aware. So kind of connecting it to that and just realizing that this is going on in the world right now, and so many people suffer. And we in our American culture, we don't get it. We don't understand it. We don't feel it. And yet we've got to find ways to reach out in solidarity, and even a simple way of saying, hey, we're with you, we walk with you, we love you, we know you're being persecuted, and to offer them that.
Scott, these letters of St. Paul are really about a persecuted people to a persecuted people. These really are letters of keep the faith, hold it together. I know it's bad. I know they're burning you in the streets. I know they're cutting you up, but this is embrace it. Keep walking through. What of that message do we need today, and why is it so relevant?
When you look at the earlier letters of Paul, like 1 Thessalonians, or even the Corinthian correspondence, there's a lot of interesting and profound theological speculation. But when you fast forward to the prison epistles, you get a sense that they're shorter and they get right to the point, which is how do you live the gospel, especially in the face of the persecution around us in the world. And I think, I think back 30, 40 years, nobody saw this coming. I mean, what has happened to our culture in redefining everything from marriage to right and wrong, traditional morality is now viewed as weird, which is the weirdest thing of all. And so we have got to buckle up and really pray and enter into the wisdom of Paul's writings, because we might not end up in prison, but our children or our grandchildren will, and they're going to have a lot to learn from the lessons of this man. It's said that Paul was such a zealous apostle, Paul was, because Saul was such a zealous persecutor. God redirected all of that energy. And even though he's aging in this movie, it is really refined and deepened. And I think that's the kind of wisdom we need now. Theological speculation has a place, but that really practical wisdom in the face of death and suffering, this is where we learn life's deepest lessons.
Jim, we had some tweets from, I know what they're called, it's late. We had some tweets. Susan Brown writes, hello from Scotland. Will the movie get a release in the United Kingdom? Eric, you answer that one and then we'll move on. There's a part 2 to this.
Well, with James Faulkner being, a great British gentleman, he'd better get a release in the United Kingdom, right? Yeah. No, it will, and it's really exciting. Along with our March 23rd release here in the United States, we currently have it being released end of March to the middle of April right now in 24 different countries around the world.
Yeah. Big.
So it's exciting.
Okay, Jim, part 2.
Yeah.
Susan Brown, also from Scotland. Is there any of Mr. Reese in your playing of Luke? And would you play John Reese again if offered?
Okay, so the first question, only Jesus.
Okay. Only Jesus is it?
How many of you guys watched Person of Interest? Any of you? Wow.
There were 2 or 3 of them out there, Jim.
Yes.
Write to Warner Brothers. That's all you have to do. Just keep writing.
Well, at the end of the series, or the last episode,
Yeah.
he did kind of go down in a hail of bullets on a rooftop, right?
Well, you didn't see a body, did you? I could have had a bulletproof jacket on.
So it's John Reese, the resurrection? Is that what I'm hearing?
Mel Gibson is working on that
Yeah,
one.
I'm sure he is, yeah.
The next, Mel has me next. Mel has me next.
Okay.
So. They could turn it into a film, who knows?
Tell us about the spiritual practices that you adopted as you were preparing and working on the film. And I will tell everyone here, we have about 11 minutes to the live broadcast. I may extend that another half hour and take questions from this audience if you want. Want to do that? Okay. Not everybody. I see 4 of you. All right. The rest of you want to go what? Watch the end of the Oscars? And the Oscars. Go ahead. This is more fun than Jane Fonda, I promise. Go ahead. The spiritual practices you adapted for the playing of this role.
Well, in the Passion of the Christ, I took the Eucharist every day, and it's powerful. I mean, it goes right through my DNA. It attaches to it. On the Passion, I would go to confession every day, and then what I would do is, as I was praying the Rosary, then I would go into the Aramaic, the Hebrew, the Latin, and that kept my focus very, very strong. And then in this one, I got up early in the morning, and you went to Mass as well. Malta has Catholic churches all over the place, so I just walk out my door, go right inside there, and then I had the relics. I had St. Luke with me. I had St. Paul with me, and then just always prayed the Rosary. And then just the rest of it is just, and I have a devotion to St. Genesius. And of course, Our Lady really, she brings so much peace, because constantly when you do films like this, you're always going to be under attack. But I don't see that as a bad thing. It just sharpens me. It makes me stronger. I believe that the devil is more afraid of me than I am of him.
There is a moment in the movie that I heard particularly this time. I watched it twice through, and it's a peculiar line in Scripture. We don't know a lot about it. I want both you, Dr. Hahn, and Eric to reflect on this, where Paul says, the devil stalks me, this picks up on your line, the devil stalks me day and night, reminding me of this thorn in my flesh. Why include that, and what is the thorn in his flesh?
We don't know. He never specifies. And I think it's remarkable that he doesn't. It's a messenger of Satan, he says in 2 Corinthians. And so there's been speculation as to whether it was demonic, whether it was physical, whether it was spiritual. But whatever it was, it's precisely how Jesus taught him the greatest lesson of all. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. That comes in the exact same context there in 2 Corinthians 12. And so I think the thorn in the flesh that Jim might be referring to, or we all share this, this is precisely where God teaches us again and again that he really does accomplish more with our less. And I think that's the key. Was it an eyesight problem? Perhaps. That's the view I'm inclined to say because of some passages in Galatians and elsewhere. But the very fact that he doesn't identify shows us that he wasn't a complainer or a whiner. But the fact that he emphasizes what God accomplishes through this messenger of Satan, this thorn in the flesh, through this great weakness, is what gives us great hope.
And our decision in terms of writing and production was wanting to use that as a moment to show the humanity of Paul and the struggles of Paul. And choosing, and I don't want to give it away because I want you guys to see it in the film in the moment, but to see that as a moment where this is a man who is completely saved by grace and yet doesn't forget his past, where he's come from, what he's done in the past, the sins of his past. And to a certain degree, we reflect back on those at moments, and they can at times torment us.
He's haunted by them throughout the
haunted by
movie.
them.
He sees the flashbacks of those moments of persecution of which he was responsible. I'm going to give each of you a few minutes here. We have 6 minutes in the live broadcast left. Why don't I start with you, Eric? Then I'll go to Dr. Hahn, and I'll give you the final word, Jim. But in the live broadcast, then we're going to go on another half hour, and you won't be able to see it till the world over airs. So, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I'm going to take my couple of minutes in just a moment just to say that it's been an amazing privilege for us as an organization, ODB Films, and the gift it was for Sony Affirm Films to partner with us and to extend to us the opportunity to create something beautiful together. It's really it's the first time that they've ever partnered with a Catholic organization. And that's pretty amazing. You know, they took a big risk in joining with us and purchasing the script and having us produce it, and now having us help communicate and market it. And it's a tremendous gift, and we want to continue to put beautiful films out like this. And we want the Catholic Church to be engaged. So I ask you, go to the film, go see this film. You know, go bring your friends. It's beautiful. It's very real. I like to say it's really the most real first century piece since the last time this guy was in a film. You know, and it's a beautiful piece. And bring groups. You know, get your church to go. Get groups to grow. Get your small groups to go. Go see this film. It will move you. And I believe it's also something very unique in that our heart was to make a good film, a good story with good character development, and to shoot it in a really good and beautiful and creative way. And I think we've accomplished that. But then you mix in the story, and that's, you know, so I think bring your friends who aren't churched, you know, who are fallen away from the church. They're going to see something very unique and very beautiful in what Jim and James and the team presented through this story.
The takeaway for me is that people are going to watch this, and I think they're going to love Paul ever more. I think that Catholics might tend to feel a sort of ambivalence toward Paul. You know, 500 years ago, Martin Luther weaponized Paul's writings against the Catholic Church when he launched the Reformation. For more than 10 years, I used, especially the book of Romans, against Catholics. And so Catholics aren't quite sure exactly how to read Paul. But I think this is going to show us that not only was Paul a Catholic, but I think he's going to open up the heart of our faith in ways when we go back and revisit his writings and recognize that this is not just a philosopher, it's not just speculation. This came from the school of suffering through which all of us must go through.
Jim, I'm going to give you the last word.
This message is for you. A great man once said that evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. Well, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose this war, and in so doing lose this great way of freedom of ours, history will report with the greatest astonishment that those that had the most to lose did the least to prevent it from happening. Well, I think it's high time now that we ask ourselves if we still even know the freedoms that were intended for us by our founding fathers. Every generation of Americans needs to know that freedom exists, not to do what you like, but having the right to do what you ought. You weren't made to fit in, my brothers and sisters. You are born to stand out. Set yourself apart from this corrupt generation. Be saints. God bless you.